Coming up on a newscast, North Korea fires more ballistic missiles, including what appears to be an ICBM. Seoul and Washington decide to extend large-scale combined aerial exercises. The nation's top office convened an emergency NSC meeting. South Korea will maintain combined military readiness with the U.S. and may slap more unilateral sanctions on the regime. Koreans continue to visit memorial altars set up nationwide to send thoughts and prayers to the Itaewon crowd crush victims. President Yoon ordered officials to set up a one-stop support center for the bereaved families and the injured. Hello and welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che here to bring the latest. Let's begin with our top story. North Korea again fired multiple ballistic missiles, including what appears to be an ICBM. The launches appear to be in protest of Seoul and Washington's combined aerial military drills. In response, the allies have decided to extend it. Bae Eun-ji starts us off.
South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said Thursday morning that it detected a total of 3 ballistic missiles being launched from North Korea. One was a long-range ballistic missile detected at around 7:40 a.m. It appears to have been the North's Hwasong-17 ICBM, but failed after going through stage separation. Launched from the Sunan area of the North's capital, Pyongyang, it only traveled around 760 kilometers at an altitude of 1,920 kilometers and flew at Mach 15. Soon after that, at 8:39 a.m., 2 more, this time short-range ballistic missiles, were fired from North Korea's Gyecheon region. They flew around 330 kilometers at an altitude of 70 kilometers and at a speed of Mach 5.
The recent series of ballistic missile launches from North Korea pose a serious threat to the peace and security of the Korean peninsula, as well as the international community. We strongly condemn the launch and we urge the North to immediately put a stop to its provocations, as they are a clear violation of UN Security Council resolutions.
The latest provocations appear to be a protest against the large-scale aerial exercise between the air forces of South Korea and the U.S. that's been taking place in South Korea since Monday, involving some 240 warplanes. But continued provocations from the North have led to the allies extending the drill. South Korea's Air Force announced this a few hours after the North's missile launch, but didn't immediately provide information on how long the extension will be. This comes less than a day after North Korea on Wednesday fired 25 missiles, the highest number it has fired in a single day. One of them even flew across the de facto maritime border with South Korea. This was the first time that a North Korean missile came close to South Korea's territorial waters since the two Koreas separated in 1948. In response, South Korea on Wednesday fired 3 precision-guided air-to-surface missiles from its warplanes. But there were still concerns about whether the South will actually be able to intercept the North's missiles, as it later turned out that its medium-range surface-to-air missile Cheongung did not work properly during an annual firing contest that was carried out on the same day the North conducted most number of missiles. During the event aimed at sharpening the country's capability of countering aerial threats, the missile flew about 25 kilometers toward the East Sea before blowing up. The country's Air Force explained that the missile is designed to blow up on its own when it's not able to communicate properly with its control radar for safety reasons, and that it's looking into the matter to identify the exact cause of the malfunction. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
South Korea convened an emergency National Security Council meeting to discuss the regime's provocations. According to the top office, combined military exercises with the U.S. will continue regardless of the North's testing activities. Our Moon Gun-young reports.
As North Korea fired multiple ballistic missiles Thursday morning, just one day after the regime's barrage of weapons tests, the South Korean president's national security advisor Kim Sung-hun convened an emergency security meeting to discuss the North escalating provocations. Joining the meeting upon returning from a visit to a mourning site for the victims of a crowd surge in Itaewon last weekend, President Yoon ordered the military to strengthen its defense in conjunction with its alliance with the United States, strengthen the South Korea-U.S. extended deterrence enforcement, and expand the South Korea-U.S.-Japan security cooperation. The President and the Security Council members noted that Thursday's missiles from North Korea come on the heels of the more than 20 missiles and artillery shells fired just a day before, one of which flew in the direction of a populated South Korean island and landed on the southern side of a de facto sea border. On Wednesday,
Upon being briefed on the situation, President Yoon Suk-yeol ordered swift and stern measures so that North Korea pays a clear price for its provocations.
This again, they echoed, a grave violation of UN Security Council resolutions and serious provocations driving up tensions in and around the peninsula. Seoul's top office said South Korea will maintain its combined military exercises with the United States in response to North Korea's intensifying testing activity, which it said would only deepen the North's international isolation and unleash further economic shock on its people. That condemnation was repeated by the top nuclear envoys of Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo over the phone when they stressed that the responsibility over escalating tensions on the peninsula lies solely with Pyongyang and that its repeated provocations will only further boost the three countries' security cooperation. 문건영, Arirang News.
South Korea could slap more unilateral sanctions on Pyongyang. According to the Foreign Ministry, discussions are held with the U.S., Japan, and other allies on ways to enhance the effectiveness of such measures. Last month, the country announced the first unilateral sanctions on the regime in 5 years. 15 individuals and 16 organizations were blacklisted for contributing to Pyongyang's development of nukes and missiles, as well as assisting the North's efforts to evade sanctions. As North Korea continues to carry out missile launches, there are concerns over what could come next. Some experts fear the regime may conduct a nuke test before the U.S. midterm elections. Yoon provides a deeper analysis.
Concerns mount over what comes next following North Korea's series of provocations that are becoming all too familiar. Washington forecasts further provocations, meaning a seventh nuclear test, according to State Department spokesperson Ned Price on Wednesday. And if the regime goes ahead with one, there will be costs and consequences. This is something predicted by experts in South Korea too, possibly before the U.S. midterm elections, which are now less than a week away.
North Korea's strategy of provocation involves a gradual increase in the level of show of force and quote-unquote provocative actions, since North Korea has carried out short-range ballistic missile launches and then followed by today's supposedly intercontinental ballistic missile. So what's left now is the seventh nuclear test.
North Korea has fired ballistic missiles 30 times this year alone, involving intensive provocations in recent weeks in particular, coinciding with South Korea-U.S. joint military drills. The regime fired more than 24 missiles just on Wednesday, with the one that ended up very close to South Korea's territorial waters over the northern limit line for the first time since the division of the peninsula. The last time Pyongyang fired an intercontinental ballistic missile was back in May, shortly after U.S. President Joe Biden's visit to South Korea and Japan. Yoon, Arirang News.
The U.S. says North Korea is supplying Russia with artillery shells for use in the war against Ukraine. The White House claims the regime is funneling ammo through third countries to conceal their true destination. Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
According to White House National Security Council spokesman John Kirby on Wednesday, Washington has information indicating that North Korea is supplying a large number of artillery shells to Russia for Moscow's ongoing aggression in Ukraine. Speaking at a virtual meeting, Kirby said that while the North publicly denied that it intended to provide ammunition to Russia, Pyongyang has indeed been supplying Russia with a significant number of artillery shells for its war in Ukraine. U.S. State Department spokesperson Ned Price also echoed Kirby's remarks, adding that the North was trying to conceal the true destination of its arms shipment to Russia by funneling them through third countries in the Middle East and North Africa.
The DPRK is covertly supplying Russia's war in Ukraine with a significant number of artillery shells while obfuscating the real destination of these arms shipments by trying to make it appear as though they're being sent to countries in the Middle East or North Africa.
It's unclear, according to Washington, whether any of the shipments from North Korea have reached Russia yet. Meanwhile, Kirby insisted shells from North Korea will not change the course of the war in Ukraine, but said they will add to Russia's ability to kill more people in the European country. He added that the U.S. will work to hold North Korea accountable. The NSC spokesperson also condemned North Korea's missile provocations after Pyongyang fired more than 20 missiles on Wednesday, one of which landed in waters south of the northern limit line, calling it a reckless decision. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
People continue to visit the memorial altar set up nationwide for those who lost their lives in the Itaewon crowd crush. President Yoon Suk-yeol was at one of the venues to pay his respects again. Min Suk-hyun joining us from the memorial altar setup at Seoul Plaza right now. Suk-hyun, I can only imagine what the atmosphere there is like right now.
Right, Daniel. There's just endless grief and sorrow. People are mourning in silence even at this hour here at the memorial altar. Since early morning, many have been out here to pay tribute to those who lost their lives in Itaewon's crowd crush. Wiping away tears, people laid a white chrysanthemum, left messages of condolence, and prayed for the dead.
The victims are my age, they are like my friends, and so that's why I feel so heartbroken. Thinking about their parents made me cry. Coming here to pay my respects was the only thing I could do, and I really hope they rest in peace.
Most of Saturday's victims were women in their 20s, and the youngest were school children. Mourners who come here say it's still hard to believe.
I'm so sad that this happened. Most of them didn't even have the chance to achieve their dreams. Since this is a difficult time for everyone, I hope we all overcome this and make sure that this never happens again.
Earlier in the morning at around 9 a.m., President Yoon Suk-yeol visited this altar accompanied by his officials from the presidential office. He laid a white chrysanthemum and paid a silent tribute. President Yoon has been visiting memorial altars every morning since Monday. Also, former Japanese Prime Minister Taro Aso, who's on a short visit to Korea, came here to offer his condolences.
The whole nation is grieving and is still in shock, and we are observing a period of national mourning until Saturday. Can you give us some updates on the related figures and also the funeral that's been held?
Well, Daniel, as of Thursday evening, the death toll stands at 156, the same as the previous day. Already we know that 130 are Koreans and 26 are foreign nationals. Among the injured, 35 are currently receiving treatment at local hospitals, and in fact, 33 of them are reportedly in serious condition. Officials say funerals have been held for at least 121 people. Several memorial altars have been set up in 25 districts of Seoul for people to pay tribute until this Saturday, the last day of the week-long national mourning period. The altar here at Seoul Plaza runs from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., but of course people can come here and pay their respects outside of these hours. Daniel.
All right, Suk-hyun, thank you for being out there for us. We appreciate it. Moving on to other stories now, President Yoon called for a one-stop support center to be set up for the bereaved families and the injured and keep it running even after the mourning period is over. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo pledged to fully support the Itaewon victims, both local and foreign. Our Kim Bo-kyung sheds light on the government's support measures.
President Yoon Suk-yeol has ordered his aides to set up a one-stop integrated support center for the bereaved families and those injured from the Itaewon incident, so that help can be provided even after the national mourning period ends. According to Deputy Presidential Spokesperson Lee Jae-myung, the order was made after Yoon visited a memorial altar for the fourth straight day on Thursday. Set up under the Prime Minister's office and run by related ministries, the center will offer all necessary services from funeral arrangements and providing relief funds to psychological treatment. Yoon also called for National Center for Disaster and Trauma to extend its services so that people can get help when trying to overcome trauma and psychological stress.
President Yoon emphasized that we need to undergo a major transformation to make South Korea a safe country that properly points out and fixes every element that undermines our society's overall safety.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo also pledged to provide the necessary support for both local and foreign victims. Presiding over a meeting of the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures headquarters on Thursday, he said the country will make sure funeral arrangements and treatment for the injured are properly provided. If necessary, the government will ask the workplaces of the bereaved families and those injured to let them take time off. Regarding non-Korean victims, he asked the Foreign Ministry to make sure they get the support they need for funeral services and repatriation. In the wake of the Itaewon incident, Han underlined how the government will begin safety checks on large gatherings and festivals that are expected to have more than 10,000 people per hour starting Thursday.
We ask all local governments to review safety management manuals over regional festivals from ground zero, regardless of whether there is a host. In the wake of the Itaewon incident, the government will set up an innovative safety management system, including crowd management based on scientific analysis.
The health ministry, too, is to broaden its psychological treatment for the bereaved families, the injured, and the general public. More mobile treatment centers will be ready nearby memorial altars nationwide, while medical staff and paramedics who were in Itaewon on the night of the accident are able to get trauma management treatment. The ministry also set up a hotline so that anyone in need of counseling as they suffer from traumatic stress can call 1577-0199. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Shifting our focus to a different story now, the U.S. Federal Reserve raised key interest rate by another 75 basis points. That move was expected, but Fed Chair Jerome Powell indicated while future hikes might be smaller, the ultimate target rate could be higher. The latest decision sent stocks dipping around the world. Kim Yo-sun helps us look beyond the digits.
The Fed announced its fourth consecutive 0.75 percentage point hike in interest rates, stepping up its fight against 40-year high inflation in the country.
Today, the FOMC raised our policy interest rate by 75 basis points, and we continue to anticipate that ongoing increases will be appropriate. We are moving our policy stance purposefully to a level that will be sufficiently restrictive to return inflation to 2%.
Wednesday's decision brings the central bank's benchmark lending rate to a new range of 3.75 to 4%. This is the highest the rates have been since January of 2008. The rate, which was near zero in March, has jumped 3.75 percentage points since then. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell warned that taming severe inflation will likely require even higher interest rates than he had predicted just 2 months ago. He also indicated that the bank expects rates will reach 4.4% by the end of the year and won't start coming down until 2024.
It's very premature, in my view, to think about or be talking about pausing our rate hike. We have a ways to go. Our policy, we need ongoing rate hikes to get to that level of sufficiently restrictive.
Responding to the Fed's announcement, U.S. stocks tumbled Wednesday with the Nasdaq Composite dropping by 3.36%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average and the S&P 500 both slid 1.55 and 2.5% respectively. Kim Yo-sun, Arirang News.
And the Fed's latest move puts more pressure on the Bank of Korea to raise its own rates to avoid a currency outflow. The BOK's next meeting on interest rates comes at the end of this month, but a number of factors complicate the situation. Shin Ha-young explains further.
The Fed's latest rate hike creates greater economic uncertainty for South Korea. This is according to Seoul's finance ministry based on findings from Thursday's emergency economic meeting chaired by Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho. The Fed's aggressive monetary tightening has widened the gap in interest rates between South Korea and the U.S. to 1 percentage point for the first time in more than 3 years. The Bank of Korea is now under growing pressure to act decisively. The Fed's decision will require the BOK to raise its own rates to avoid currency outflows. Narrowing the gap is important because it's contributed to the dramatic weakening of the Korean won, which raises the cost of imports and adds to inflation.
$1 exchange rate would also be an interesting thing to look for in the coming days and weeks, not least because the Korean bond market, especially, is far from stable at the moment.
Experts say the calculation for the BOK is complex and involves a number of variables.
They need to note the Federal Reserve's rate hikes, but they're probably not in a position to hike rates at the same pace as the Federal Reserve is doing. And so I think this is actually a difficult time for Korean companies. The Korean bond market has been pretty volatile, and inflation and unemployment, of course, are also concerning.
If the BOK decides to take another so-called big step by raising its benchmark interest rates by 50 basis points, the government, companies, and households face the burden of bigger debt payments. The BOK will meet to decide on rates on November 24th. Meanwhile, during Thursday's emergency economic meeting, officials discussed the Fed's move and reviewed the condition of local financial markets. In response, the Finance Ministry said it's going to step up its vigilance and take action if necessary. 신하영, Arirang News.
Turning to the world of sports now, Tottenham Hotspur star and South Korean national team captain Heung-min is undergoing surgery for a fracture around his left eye. According to the EPL team, on Wednesday, a day after Son sustained the injury during Spurs' UEFA Champions League match against Marseille, no date for return has been revealed, casting doubt on whether he'll be able to lead the Taeguk Warriors at the upcoming World Cup in Qatar. South Korea's opening match against Uruguay is scheduled for November 24th. South Korea's first and only orchestra made up of members with visual impairments celebrates its 10th anniversary. Haegwang seeks to change perceptions of disabilities in the field of music. The orchestra performed a special piece dedicated to the Itaewon disaster victims. Kim Jung-sil has the full story.
This is the first South Korean orchestra that consists only of visually impaired musicians. All members are students, graduates, or even teachers of Incheon's Haegwang School, a special school for the visually impaired. This year marks the orchestra's 10th year anniversary. Some might think that an orchestra like this would not be possible. So, how do they do it?
Because I can't see the sheet music, the teacher tells me all the pitches and notes and the tempo as well. We also practice playing while listening to other instruments for the ensemble.
One of the guests of honor at this year's performance was the Israeli ambassador to Korea, Akiva Tor.
And I think that they're an example, even at an international level, for what people with disabilities can do in the field of music.
At the start of the 2-hour concert, the orchestra and audience took a moment of silence to mourn the lives lost in Itaewon over the weekend. One of the highlights of this year's concert was the performance of the song The Prayer by soprano Lee Seon-ok and singer Kim Hyuk-gon in memory of those who lost their lives in Itaewon.
I felt depressed for a while after seeing the news, so when I came to the concert, I felt like they were consoling me. Their performance gave me comfort.
The Haegwang Blind Orchestra said they hope their music can console the broken hearts in South Korea as well as those around the world. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
Expect early winter-like conditions for tomorrow. Mornings will be frosty for most inland regions, with places like Itaewon seeing sub-zero figures. The capital region will also see morning temperatures drop by about 7 degrees compared to today. Lows in Seoul will start up at 0 degrees Celsius tomorrow. Keep in mind that with the cold wind chills, conditions will feel close to -2 degrees, so make sure to dress in layers. For the time being, inland regions will see frost in the morning hours. The combination of low temperatures and frost can damage sensitive vegetation, so make sure to cover them up. And as the cold air mass is likely to become more widespread, dry spells are also intensifying. Please take extra precautions against fires. Chilly mornings are expected for inland regions. Chuncheon will be especially cold at -2 degrees Celsius. Daily highs in Seoul will reach 11 degrees, Gwangju 13, Daegu and Gyeongju will be topping out at 14 degrees. The rest of the week will contain wide temperature gaps, and for the Seoul metropolitan area, brief showers are in the forecast next Monday. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
And that's all from us. As always, thank you for watching.